Vital Reflections, Cinema's Societal Mirror. We're your hosts. I'm Kevin.
I'm Chris.
And today we'll be talking about two love letters to public access and art and free speech, maybe.
Yeah.
We're looking at Wayne's World and
UHF.
but in the opposite order, in fact. We're going to go chronologically. I think we're both pretty excited to talk about these movies. I think we're both fans of
Absolutely, yeah.
the creative minds behind them, but also probably the films themselves. For those of you listening, Chris often wears a certain cap.
A literal Wayne's World hat. Because it is literally my favorite movie ever. So that's it's always my sword and my shield. It's my inspiration.
You came in here and you're like, well, of course, I had to wear my hat for this one. I was like, I didn't even realize you wear the hat because you wear it all the time.
It blends
it's just
in.
a part of you. It's part of your uniform at this point.
It's either this or a flat cap. But yeah, it's like those are the two variations.
I like it. It's cool. It's a good one. We're gonna start by talking about UHF, right? Because it comes out first. It's late 80s, 89, I think.
89, I believe, was when it was released. Because I watched it. I've rewatched it twice within the last month or so, and I recently rewatched it with director's commentary. I remember they mentioned that they filmed the bulk of it in 88, but there were certain sequences I remember Weird Al saying that they filmed in like early 89. So the film had to have been released in 89. And it's very interesting because it was co-written and directed by I want to say it was Zach Levy is the name of or Joshua. Like, I'm messing that name up.
It's a Levy.
But,
hold on, vamp for a second. I'll help you out.
But
Jay Levy.
Oh God, I was close-ish.
Close.
Anyway,
Close.
Jay Levy, who was the co-writer and director of the film, also a longtime collaborator. I think even an early manager of Weird Al, and it was something that he wrote with Weird Al Yankovic, and they just they're very upfront about the fact that the film was always meant to initially, more than anything, just be a vehicle for various bits and sketches. And they just kind of had to find like a loose plot to hang it all around and everything. And what they stumble upon with that is the story of, this daydreaming creative guy who, because he has a relative who owns like a little dinky UHF station, which, we'll have to, actually, honestly, UHF stations are even kind of before, my time. By the time I even came onto this earth, cable TV was the thing, and UHF really didn't exist. Mm-hmm. But for those who are listening or watching who, maybe don't know what a UHF station is.
Anyone under the age of 70, probably.
Exactly.
Yeah, which,
In the days where the way television worked was basically, it was just like radio with pictures, in that, a TV set was had antennas and it had to catch frequencies through the airwaves the same way radio does. You would have these things called ultra high fidelity or ultra high. I don't know exactly what the F stood for.
Frequency.
Ultra high frequency stations, and they would always be these little in between the dial kind of stations that were usually occupied by very low budget and local affiliates. This was back when lots of towns. When TV, as we know it as a landscape, was, yes, you had the big broadcast stations like ABC, NBC, but they broke down to all these different little local affiliate stations, and then there were also other stations that were totally native to that area, in the same way like LMC, this is Larchmont, Mamaroneck, public access, or public media, whatever the nomenclature we go with nowadays is. This is very low. State places like LMC were all over the country at a point. Yeah. So it turns out that Weird Al's uncle in this movie owns a station like that, and is basically just willing to give it to his relation, his a poor relation here, because the guy's out of a job anyway. And it's okay, run this crappy little station, see what you could do. So him and his buddy and basically all their friends just kind of go nuts inside this TV station and try to figure things out. And when they start to be successful, it sticks in the craw of the bigwigs over at Channel 8, which is the big network affiliate that really kind of takes up the whole market. And then this rivalry ensues.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's that parallel, I think, runs through both of the films with that corporate antagonism.
Yes,
that they both present.
Is my drink spilling?
It's all right. Nothing yet.
Total pros.
So what I really like is the strangeness of the film, right? The almost absurdism of some of the characters, some of the comedy, right, I think really works for me. I agree with what you're saying in terms of like it makes sense to me, and more than agree, right? In terms of like, oh, they had a bunch of skits that they stitched together, loose narrative, because it does feel like a sizzle reel in a lot of ways, where it's like these vignettes almost like dropped in and a story then weaved around it.
Yeah, like the best example being the music video that's kind of just wedged into the film for no reason, where Weird Al's character George like has a dream sequence where it's a parody of the song Money for Nothing by Dire Straits, but the lyrics are all just about, he's just singing the Beverly Hillbilly lyrics. And another little fun thing I learned about through the director's commentary, which, by the way, folks, if you still mess around with physical media, listen to director commentaries. They're so fun, and a lot of times you could learn so much little cool trivia about a movie that you would never know otherwise. But yeah, the fun thing was when in order to get the clearance, obviously, they had to get Mark Knopfler's approval and everything. And not only did they get his approval, he insisted on playing guitar.
That's cool.
So he plays guitar on the recording that you hear in the movie and everything. And what's funny is that Weird Al even noted, initially we had the guitarist in my band at the time play the track, and he perfectly copied Mark Knopfler's sound on the record. But then when Mark Knopfler replaced it, his was actually different sounding than the recording, because he'd been playing it on the road, so it was a little looser.
Okay.
I don't know. That's nerd stuff for somebody like me.
Deep cut right there.
But the fact that
you will only find this in the director's commentary.
You will only find that. So that's what I'm saying. If you really love cinema and you want to like deconstruct movies like that, check out these commentary tracks, man. It's kind of a lost art form nowadays in the age of streaming, but again, it's something where you could learn so much. And sometimes directors will talk about like the actual like technical processes of how they pull shots off, so you can learn a lot that way. It's just cool. So that's my little.
I echo that plug for sure.
Yeah, my plug for physical media.
The cinephile in me is like, yep. Because it's another way to watch your favorite films. You will unlock new levels of meaning and understanding of characters, actors, directors, artists.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's fun usually, and you don't get them anymore when you buy digitally usually. Yeah. So it's a shame.
But yeah, if UHF has any kind of ethos, it definitely is about like encouraging creativity, and it's an underdog story of these little guys who are trying to just they get fired from their fast food job at the beginning of the movie, so they need to find some way to make money, and they're doing this because it's obviously their dream to work like in entertainment and stuff like that, but it's also like they have a voice and they want to express it, and they have this little niche way to do it, and they end up not only like. The cool thing about it is that not only do they end up kind of self-actualizing for themselves, they become successful and everything, they end up kind of giving all these other people, these friends they make along the way, voices. Like Michael Richards' character, who's like the weird kind of janitor guy, he ends up being their star, because it turns out, even though he's totally content with being the janitor, in fact, his stipulation for when he decides he's going to start acting is like, I can still be the janitor, right?
He's not giving that up. He enjoys it.
Yeah, he's got a favorite mop and everything.
Yep.
He's still very much like but he's so talented and so charismatic that he ends up being the star of the channel, really. And also they have a news show, and Fran Drescher, pre-Nanny, is in the movie as a woman who's always kind of wanted to get into like TV journalism but can't, because it's such a men's dominated market that places like Channel 8 just kind of allow that boys club mentality to continue. Yeah. So by kind of doing their own thing and leaving space for other people to come aboard, they end up kind of giving all these people in the community a chance to be heard and seen for the first time.
Yeah. No, and let's bring it all the way home then. Like, I'll jump on that, like, totally, because, the same is in Wayne's World, and I was like, as you're talking and I'm listening, I'm like, yep, I agree, totally. And I'm like, should I save this for after Wayne's World? But, like, yeah, let's just do it now, and we can circle back to Wayne's World later. But, like, the way public access, right, in UHF, Wayne's World is presented, right, I would say is not that... While it is a hyperbole, right, an exaggeration to a certain extent, right, I would say like there's a lot of truth in those presentations, right? Because let's look at those quirky oddball characters and the weird things they create, and this is the only place they were able to do it at the time, like we can talk about where it's at now later if you want, but like it was a place for misfits, it was a place for artists, it was a place for people to follow their dreams, and like we need that as a society. We need that in our culture, right? We can't, the big things, the network, right? The corporation, these gatekeepers can't keep out voices, right? Just because they're different and they don't know how to package and market and sell. And is this going to make me money? And the only place that doesn't matter, right, is in the public access kind of like sphere, you know, and it's super important in that regard, I think, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if I can,
please.
I'll take a quick divergence.
Not to get sappy for a moment, right? But we're in that world right now, you know, and I'm like, I appreciate it.
It's
you know?
literally why we're able to do this podcast. I mean, if I'll just diverge from my personal thing. Like, I went to school for film. Like, I have my BA in cinema studies and everything like that. And while I was able to take production courses in college that were, you know, definitely beneficial and everything, I really, you know, they always say like the best way to learn is by doing. And I mean, I started working as like a freelance camera operator for LMC. Oh God, it was like, I think going into my sophomore year of college. It was like 2011.
Okay. Wow, way to date yourself right there.
Yeah,
Go
man.
ahead.
We're going
math,
way
kids.
back. Yeah, do the math. I don't care. Anyway, no, but yeah, I started taping the varsity sports stuff. I started taping the local board meetings. And then after a year or two of doing that, I started being like, hey, you know, let me like pitch ideas and stuff. Like, you know, around that time, there was the local news magazine show that was starting at the time called The Local Live. I pitched and got to shoot some ads for that. And then
we were actually both alum of that. You know?
Oh yeah,
I did some local living.
You did too. Yeah, I forgot.
There's like, if you could look, they're there.
We both, and you know, we both made programs or hosted little things for LMC over the years. And yeah, it's like I've so much of my basic knowledge, production knowledge, my editing knowledge that I still rely on. That I rely on for my day job right now, which is I'm currently like a cam op over at News 12. And yeah, like a lot of my editing experience that I use there to get my job done is I learned it all from LMC. And I don't know where I would be without having this community resource that for, you know, as a community resident for little to nothing, I've been able to come in and use this place to just either borrow equipment or just come into a studio space like this and shoot things and edit them and, you know, just make art, you know, which it's impossible to overstate how important that is.
Super, super cool, super important. Places like LMC, you know, check your community, do some research, come here if you live close enough.
Yeah.
But they will give you the tools you need to create the art you want, you know, the art you're dreaming of, you know, and they will help you learn how to use those tools, you know, and that is super important. And that can be the end of our public service announcement. You know,
this is then our NPR pledge drive.
Right? Like, you know, send us your money. You know, me personally, I'll make it out to cash. But yeah, it's important. And I don't, you know, all the jokes aside, because, you know, we're talking about funny movies and we shall continue. But yeah, you know, I think that's really cool. And I'm glad that these movies exist because there should be more of them. You know, people should know about this stuff more and be using it more. And yeah, cool.
100%. Yeah, no, and I think UHF is a great example of
nice segue.
Yeah, no, it's just a great example of media being a great way. Like I said, you see the characters kind of get uplifted by getting to have their ideas actually be broadcast and everything. They become really popular, and by the end of the movie, you know, spoiler alert at work, you know, there's at some point the station becomes imperiled because the corporate bigwigs want to shut them down. But guess what? They save the day and they're able to get the money they need, so it's okay.
It all works out.
Is that even really a spoiler? Would you even want to, if you haven't seen UHF, would you even want to watch the movie if it ended with them losing to Channel 8? Come
most people who are listening to this podcast are also watching UHF right now and using us as commentary for it. Yeah, and we're just going to be on loop, and there's, you know, because the movie's longer than the podcast. But I like to think that's what you're doing right now.
Yeah, they're trying to pair us to sync it up like it's like Dark Side of the Moon and Yellow
Wizard of Oz. Yeah, that's good. All right, I got a question for you. What point is Weird Al in his career when this movie is happening?
Well, you know? I think he was fairly established by this point. I mean, he definitely had kind of started to get big because, you know, this is the late 80s, so MTV was
this feels like a vehicle, you know what I mean? So I'm wondering,
Yeah, the late 80s, by this point, he definitely had some hits with stuff like, you know, Like a Surgeon and other song parodies that had become big. You know, he was beloved by some, not so much by others. He does mention that actually the music video we mentioned earlier, the mashup of Money for Nothing and Beverly Hillbillies, was actually going to be a Prince and Beverly Hillbillies mashup, but Prince notoriously was not a fan of Weird Al. He did not care for his parodies, did not care for his music being parodied. So.
That story would be so much better if Prince had a sense of humor.
I know.
Like, I would have liked if, like, you're like, and then Prince, like, gotten into it.
I love Prince as much as the next guy. Totally respect him.
I'm not trying to talk
visionary
smack.
artist, but yeah, that's the one thing you kind of learn over time if you really, like, study up on Prince, is that for all of his genius, he unfortunately did not have much of a sense of humor when it came to his image. His image was, like, to be guarded and protected as all time. And you know what? I can respect that to a degree, but yeah, I would love it if he had been able to laugh at himself enough to, like, you know, have a little fun with a Weird Al parody.
So you're saying he would not have been a fan of some of Dave Chappelle's comedy, Prince?
I don't.
You know, I don't think it would.
I wonder. I have to imagine that got to him, right? Like,
you're right. You're right, because he was still with us.
He must have found out at that time. But I don't know if it ever got, or maybe he was cool with Dave Chappelle doing it. Who knows?
I don't know. I just wonder, you know, like
maybe by the early 2000s he'd gotten over it a little bit. But yeah, no. So Weird Al, I think, was fairly popular. But yeah, this was his next big leap, was trying to get into the movies. Unfortunately, UHF did not do well upon initial release. It didn't do well theatrically.
That does not surprise me.
Yeah. It has the vibe of a movie that had a cult.
It's a niche film.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, again, if you listen to the director's commentary, which I highly recommend, Weird Al closes, as the credits roll for the movie, Weird Al closes by literally just reading off bad reviews the movie got initially. Yeah. Like, he reads Roger Ebert's, like, scathing review and just goes like, geez, Rob, what'd I do? Run over your dog or something? Like, it's pretty funny. But, you know, if anything, I just feel like it just adds to the scrappy underdog nature of it. And Weird Al also mentions that to this day, whenever he plays clips of the film at his live shows, people chant along to it like they're watching Rocky Horror. Like, it's always, and like as soon as it got onto video, it started to have a cult following. So it's, while the initial theatrical run, first of all, it actually did make its money budget. It made a little bit over what it cost to produce. So, like, Orion didn't lose their shirts. They ended up going bankrupt later anyway. But
it's not Weird Al's fault.
It wasn't UHF's fault. You can't put that on them. But, you know, it's a movie that I think is appreciated by people who are, you know, who get it, who have the right sensibilities, who are maybe underdogs themselves in some way or another, and then who are also creative. I mean, to be a creative person is to kind of, you have to be in love with your own madness a little bit. You have to be a little delusional, because if you really want to pursue it and make something and put it out into the world, you have to convince yourself that, like, in some level, like, the world kind of needs what you have to say, which is like, does it? Probably not, but I'm going to do it anyway. I have to. And that's Weird Al's thing. It's like, did the world need a parody of Michael Jackson's Bad called Fat? No, but God, am I glad that he went ahead and made it.
Yeah, we're better off for it.
We are better off for it, you know? Or even his style parodies, like Dare to Be Stupid. I love that song.
Speaking of all those things, two fictional characters I think who would have really enjoyed UHF.
Would have been their opening night.
Wayne and Garth.
Absolutely. Right? Let's get into Wayne's world.
Yeah, so I have a whole bunch of thoughts. I realize now
I've been ranting, so go for it.
No, I realize now I thought Wayne's World and Wayne's World 2 were like one big meta movie in my mind, because watching Wayne's World again, I've seen it so much, you know, we can quote every line, we could probably do a shot for shot remake, like, on the fly right now, but we don't got the time. But yeah, you know, like, I see so much of Mike Myers' career, you know, in this film, you know, and where it goes from there, you know, his comedy, the comedy styles. But again, right, there's something endearing about the film for me, right? The characters, because there's even moments where I'm like, Wayne's a bit of an a-hole. He's got some character flaws that I'm not sure get super addressed. You know, he's got a jealousy thing that's there from the beginning. With the, who you talking to? My drummer. It's there from the beginning. They play with it. It culminates in Rob Lowe and him being right, and the argument and the end of the second act. But there's something endearing about the characters. Garth, Wayne, the doorman at the club, the helpful security guard played by Chris Farley. You know, like, everybody's got some charm to it. You know, there's some charm to this film. And again, they're all like lovable misfits, you know, like, so I really like it. I have some not flattering thoughts about Mike Myers as a comedian. Whenever you're ready, but it doesn't have to be now. But
yeah, you could go ahead.
No. Let's say some good things before I tell you like the existential crisis I had thinking about his career in comedy while watching Wayne's World.
I mean, he's going.
Let's keep it positive for a
He's
sec.
going up and down over the years, that's for sure. I'm sure even he'd be able to admit that to some extent. But yeah, no,
he's got a style.
He was he was at the top of the world with Wayne's World, and then continued to have success with like Austin Powers and everything. So he had a good run. I mean, they're gonna make another Shrek movie. He'll be fine anyway.
Yeah, he's gonna be okay, and he's done some serious acting, and like I thought it was impressed with his range a little bit. That much.
But just about Wayne's World in general, yeah, the vibe of these two guys who just have their own public access show. And this is where, like, to your point earlier about like how like these movies are a little larger than life. I don't know any station that would allow you to take the equipment home and have your studio literally be in the basement like it is in the beginning.
Yeah, I thought that was weird with the truck parked outside, but I was like, I'll suspend disbelief.
I have sometimes rented equipment from LMC or like, but it's all I always have to bring it back at a point. I don't know. Yeah, maybe they just bought it from him at some point because the show was doing a little well. Who knows? But anyway, you know, it's these two guys who have this weird little just free-form talk show in their basement that has become super popular in the local area, their hometown of Aurora, Illinois.
A suburb of Chicago.
Yes, which is the Americanization of the character, because if you know the history, and shout out to Stefanelli, who's behind the boards there, who gave us that great video that helped give us some background history.
It may or may not be linked in some form of comments on some platform right now.
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
But it was the character was Mike Myers' creation. It started back in his Second City days, and it was meant to be a kind of loving parody of the kind of airheaded rocker suburban types that he grew up with or that he knew from like places like Saskatchewan and everything. And you know, it's definitely meant to be kind of tongue in cheek. And like Wayne especially has this thing where he talks like an airhead half the time, but every other sentence he'll pull out some very verbose wording. Like it's
Wayne,
like
that's a Garth. That's a haiku. You know, yeah, I don't know why he was Keanu Reeves when I did that just now, but yeah, you know.
It's like he has these moments of lucidity and everything. But yeah, there's just these two guys who like to party. They're just party rock and roll animals, and they just love making their little show. And you just kind of learn to love them very quickly and love what they're about, which is just, you know, being local yokels doing their fun thing. And it's a very light stakes movie in the sense that the biggest thing is just that the villain in this thing is a corporate entity or a slick producer who's played by Rob Lowe, a guy named Benjamin, who just wants to take the show and basically, like a lot of entities at the time, especially in the 90s, trying to usurp the cool youth image of it and
something
use
to
it
exploit
and turn it into another product. I mean, the way they were doing that with a lot of programming, every generation has that, but especially in the 90s, they were really trying to get a hold of, like, you know, everything from slacker Gen X grunge culture to like extreme sports culture to everything in between. There was like a weird soda, like a Gen X soda called OK, where the labels on it were very like, the art was like literally just dead faced people on it and everything, because it was meant to try to. It was like, yeah, you'll buy this soda because it reflects the fact that you don't like advertising. I don't know. Right. So the 90s was all about stuff like that. So they kind of reflected it, even though this is just like 92. This is like the dawn of that stuff happening. Yeah. They were reflecting how a lot of slick ad types Fifth Avenue types were trying to just take, you know, small creators like a Wayne and Garth and just turn them basically into puppets for them to, you know, promote their stuff. And Wayne and Garth resist that, because they want to be true to themselves. This is very much still of the era when it's like you don't want to sell out, and we could talk
it's a whole separate kids. Episode. Don't do it.
Yeah, it's a whole separate episode about the politics of that and how that's changed nowadays. But you know, it's still got that spirit of just wanting to always be for the little guys, and something that Penelope Spheris, who, by the way, Penelope Spheris, great filmmaker.
That's the director of the film.
That's the director of the film. She also gave us she gave us lots of great punk movies like Suburbia and everything, but also the Decline of Western Civilization documentaries, which are great.
There's a doc feel to this a little bit, right?
Exactly.
With their interaction with the fourth wall.
And also just the simple fact that she says in the commentary, again, listen to those commentary tracks, kids.
There you go.
She talked about like how she used her sensibilities as a documentary filmmaker and her zeal for realism to always try to keep the film grounded whenever it threatened to get a little too broad or too slapsticky. And I think that's one of the charms of the movie. It's like, yeah, these are these kooky, a little larger than life characters. But at the end of the day, like, aside from the very movie plot things that happen to them, they very much feel like real kind of dudes who, especially like me, it's like some of these guys, like, you know, the cultural references change because there's a couple decades in between my youth and theirs. But like, these feel like dudes I would have been hanging out with. You know, if I was of that age at that time, like, I would be hanging out with with dudes like that one guy, a friend of theirs, who just seems to always be like hungover.
Yeah, he's or like on with the dude who's on the verge of hurling all the time.
There's only one scene in the whole movie.
Does he hurl? Does that payoff ever come? I don't remember.
Oh, you were asking me off mic before we started if like there's stuff cut. They actually did film him puking, but they said it was actually funnier if they decided it was funnier if they don't show it. So he just but there's the one scene where they're getting where Wayne's getting his car done, where that guy's actually like lucid. Because he's at work. He works at the auto body shop. Every other scene, he's always hunched over like this. It's like, you know, talk about deleted scenes. I wonder if there was a sequence where they had an intervention for him. Because
I did. I had some questions about. I was like, do you know if any scenes were cut? Because there was a moment in the film where I was like, I felt like something was missing, and it was a super inconsequential. We don't need to get into it again. We've solved it. But yeah, oh man. I like knowing the documentary thing helps like put it into perspective, because I think that helps contribute to the charm, right? I don't want to be, I'm gonna say this with a caveat for a second, but like, I don't think I want to be Wayne and Garth, but I definitely agree with you where I'm like, I know those people, like, you know, those friends, you know, some of the side characters, but as I say that, I'm conscious that like there was a period in my life where I definitely did this, and I tried to do Wayne's World without realizing, you know what I mean? And I was in college, and I worked for my college station, and like I had a show that I'm not going to say the name because I don't need like teenagers going and trying to find it.
That's okay. I'll say the one of mine because
all right, fine. You tell them yours. You tell them. Yeah, we'll you know, whatever.
And I don't even have the excuse that I was in college. I was out of college when I started this show with my buddy, but It's Our Show, another LMC original. You can easily find this one on YouTube.
I may have to check this out. We may have to have a swap party or something.
Oh, for sure. No, dude.
Oh, it's on the LMC website. It's
on the LMC website, and absolutely look it up there. It was their after hours show because we
similar, yeah. What was it called?
It was called It's Our Show. We do what we want, and it was it had a very Adult Swim vibe.
You know what? I think I would like peripheral was aware of this at one point, but I don't think I ever actually saw it or anything. Okay.
Well, you could, like I said, we got 6 episodes. Check them out. It had a very Tim and Eric awesome, like the way I would describe it to people at the time was like it's if Wayne and Garth wanted to be Tim and Eric. And the origin of that show was that we actually, my co-host Dan was actually, he needed to just film a sketch for like a project. He was getting a film associates at WCC, and Dina was helping the production, Dina Schumacher, Dina Schumacher-Vachta. Sorry,
she's usually in the production booth,
but she's not today. But we're giving her a shout out anyway. And she was in the production booth when we filmed this sketch. And as we were wrapping up, she was like, "Yeah, I can't believe this. I don't understand why nobody has ever tried to do like a Wayne's World type show here." And I just took that as a challenge. So then we started It's Our Show.
See, and you sound proud of it, and it makes me want to go watch it. I don't have those feelings about mine.
It's a rough show. I'm like, I mean, it's good. I'm proud of it, but we made it with $0 and love. It was just, but that's what it was about. We started that show being like, let's just make all the dumb sketch ideas we've always wanted to do. I got a camera. We could go to the studio too. We'll film the host segments. Then we'll just make the dumbest things. We'll get bands we know to play because we knew a lot of musicians.
That's awesome.
And it was so fun to do.
Okay.
And if COVID hadn't gotten in the way, the real tragedy of the
real villains here.
Yeah, the real tragedy of the pandemic was that it killed It's Our Show season 2. That's the real tragedy of what happened in 2020 more than anything else. I don't challenge that at all.
Okay. All right. Shots fired, everyone else.
Nah. But I'm proud of that show and how it's the closest
we've got like World. We're running out of time. Let me fumble through my awkward story just because I want to be part of it, and then we can begin to wrap up.
I gotta hear this now.
Junior year of college, like joined our TV station. This is Manhattan College. This would be Tower TV, MCTV. I don't remember what it was called, right? But basically, I knew very little about anything. I was like, cool, I have ideas. I like to pretend to make art. Like, I'd like that opportunity. And they're like, cool, be our editor for everything now. And you can produce your own show if you want.
Yeah.
So by senior year, so I figured some stuff out. And by figured, I use air quotes very loosely. By senior year, I'm living in an apartment-style dorm with my roommate, who's this fun, energetic, kind of kooky guy, much more outgoing and funny than I am. And he's like, so you got this TV station, let's do something. So we basically made a show called Roommates, ROOM8S.
Nice.
And I have worked hard to try to remove this from the internet. We filmed and edited it. We had loose script ideas written on mirrors, and again, they were like bits.
Yeah.
Ridiculousness, but it was like an Odd Couple premise where I was the straight man, and like slowly over the show, he breaks me. Like he drives, I buy into the insanity. By the end of it, I'm like all on board.
Yeah.
So it was cool. It was messy. It was raw, but for like a hot second in that mid-level college way, like people saw the show, people were coming up. It was that opening of Wayne's World.
Nice.
I was getting heckled from people's dorm room windows. Roommates sucks by other people. I was like, I've made it. The residence life people, the RDs were like, I want to be on it.
Nice.
Manhattan College was run by like the Christian Brothers, and they were like, this is hilarious. Like, yeah. So it was fun.
It was so good that they weren't even worried that you got to pass.
At some point, we went a little too far. We took some shots at the cafeteria, and some stuff. Like we made a fake commercial. But yeah, I mean, at some point we did a Dark Knight parody that was like, it's art. Let me just tell you.
Oh, nice.
And with that said, case in point, right? Like, I don't think any of that would be possible. Without these films, right? Because I definitely had seen these films and been like, I want to do these things, and like this is showing me how it can happen.
Yeah.
But also without public access, community media, places like LMC Media, we wouldn't have been able to do that, and we still wouldn't be able to. So yeah, right. Please don't go try to find this show. Anyone else. And I mean that like my high school students that are trying to lurk and listen. But Chris, if you want to see this and laugh at me, and
please
I will feel embarrassed, I can probably hook you up.
Yeah, hook me up, and then you could like I'll send you the LMC page to It's Our Show, and we'll watch. Yeah.
All right. Final thoughts about anything?
Final thoughts is that I think UHF and Wayne's World are two great movies. They're hilarious. I'm sure anybody who listens to this is probably going to like be screaming because like we kind of loosely talked about both movies. We didn't really get into all the bits and everything.
I
but
think
listen,
we more talked about how they have influenced and affected us, and
which is
their
fine. I mean,
importance,
listen, it's the name of the podcast is Reflections and Mirror. Like we're talking about the effect of the movie.
Yeah, go watch the movie. Make your own opinions and thoughts. Come listen. Go make your own art too. But hopefully this makes you want to watch it if you haven't seen it. And if you've seen it, you know what we've been talking about.
And if you have the effect if these movies have the effect on you that they had on us, which says they kind of give you this idea, it's like it'd be kind of cool if I could find like a place where I could make like my own dumb little show it to my friends, see what happens. Then I mean, if you live in the Larchmont, America, if you live in the Westchester area where we're at, try to maybe reach out to LMC or try to see if there's even a more local public access place that you're not familiar with, and try to find something. I know in this modern day in the internet, it's very easy to just kind of get your own, shoot something on your phone and upload it to YouTube. And there's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, it's cool. Like,
there is the algorithm, the you
that's
can't,
true, the corporate thing.
The certain word, there's no more free speech.
That's true.
So here we could
the
swear
Benjamins
if
have
we
kind
want,
of won. The Benjamins and the Channel 8s have won in a way.
So fight for it, take it back.
Yeah.
I will do one better on Chris's recommendation. Reach out to Chris and I, and let's make some art, right? And we could do this place. And you have no choice in the matter. I've just volunteered you.
Oh boy, I'm in it now.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you very much for listening to Chris and I free associate, ramble, gush, talk a little bit about these movies and a lot more about other things that come from them. Maybe you learned, maybe you laughed and cried, maybe you cared, but
just a little bit.
This has been Real Reflections, cinema's societal mirror.
You nailed it.
That's right, boys.
You did it.
We've got this unlocked. This show is running itself now.
Exactly.
At the end, here we go. Watch. We have been your hosts, Kevin and
Chris.
Thanks for listening, watching, whatever, and we'll see you next time.
We certainly will. Check out LMC, everybody, and check out this podcast, and we'll see you soon.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.